You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 102. If your teen has had the experience of doing great 1 minute or maybe one term, but then not so great the next, and it's not because they just didn't study or put in any effort that time, then today I'm going to share what might well be going on to cause those inconsistent results and what to do about it. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey VIPs, how are you doing? I hope you're doing really well. I am doing great because I'm recording this in the lead up to my live Exam Success Secrets webinar. What exams demand of your teen, but schools don't teach. So if you're listening to this on the episode release day, that's the 11th of June 2024, then be sure to register right now and come to the live webinar. You can register at www.greattransformation.com/exams. Now, I am going to record the webinar, so if you're a few days beyond that, then still go to that webpage and you'll be able to access the recording. And I'm going to keep the recording available for 6 days afterwards, up until the 17th of June. So I really hope you can catch me there for that. Now, following on from exam technique that we discussed in last week's episode, and in line with the exams webinar that I'm going to be delivering 11th of June, let's talk today a little bit about results. Results in exams, yes, but also results in assignments, reports, presentations, essays, tests. If your teen has had the experience of doing great in one or more of those, 1 minute, or maybe in a particular term, but then not so great the next, then A, they're not alone, and B, I want to shed some light on why this happens, even if your teen is or has been still putting in the effort. Because of course, if they just didn't really try on that particular essay or they didn't do any revision for that exam, then it's pretty obvious why they might have gotten a lower mark. I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about the times when they did work hard, they put in the time and effort, they were confident with their subject content, they understood the topic, and they had done the required work or what they thought was required in the task, but then didn't have that translate into a result that matched their effort, matched their knowledge, or maybe even just matched their usual or expected level of achievement. And I've had this happen for me when I was a student and when I was a little bit older, which I'll tell you about in a second. And I've heard about this happening and seen it happening for multiple different students that I've taught, students that I've coached, students that I've worked with as a tutor or as a study coach. And I've had, unfortunately, multiple examples and stories of this happening for students. I've seen students totally ace an assignment in one term and then bomb the next. I had a student tell me that he'd just gotten an A for his physics assignment and was very pleasantly surprised by that result. And when I asked, well, do you know why you got the A? He was very honest and admitted he didn't really. He was pleased to get it, of course, but he just didn't really know exactly what he'd done differently this time or how he'd operated in a particularly good way or answered in a particularly good way to get that result. And then on the flip side, I remember a parent a while back telling me about her daughter who had spent hours on this research project for humanities, and she'd gotten really into the topic. She had well over a page of just lists of sources, and she'd submitted this hugely comprehensive research project on the topic. I really wish I could remember what the topic was or what the question was, but I can't. But what I do remember is that they came out with a D grade, which was massively disappointing for her daughter and super confusing, obviously hugely demoralizing, not least because this was one of her daughter's favorite subjects and one that she usually did pretty well in, but because of all of that time, those hours and hours and hours, she spent weeks on researching and putting together this project. So what went wrong? Because we don't tend to think so much about the ones that went right and were unexpected, even though they were high. We tend to think more about those ones that were not where we wanted them to be, that were lower than we expected or would like. Now, you might be able to guess the answer to this. You've heard me talk about it a lot of times. For the student that got the D grade, she just didn't answer the question. And of course, for the student who got the A grade, they exactly answered what the question was asking. They just did it with a bit of a lack of awareness. And I will say I've had the exact same issues happen to me, obviously most memorably when those results have not been good and I have been disappointed or confused and demoralized. And I will tell you about a slightly unexpected or surprising time when this happened. It was during my teacher training. And I did my teacher training after my first degree. I didn't know that I wanted to go and become a high school teacher from, the word go or from doing even my initial degree. I did a postgraduate certificate of secondary education in the UK a few years after my bachelor's degree, after I'd worked in the environment and conservation industry for a few years. And so I was in my mid-20s. So this is a little bit of a vulnerable admission here from me, not least because this happened to me as I was doing my teacher training. I should have known about this stuff. But I think it's worthwhile to share this because it shows how this can happen to anyone, and it shows how early on in my teaching, before I became an examiner, before I worked with examination boards, before I was a moderator and a scrutiny panel member and an external examiner and a marker and all of those things, I still didn't have the awareness of this. Even though I was doing great in my pracs, I was doing great on my placements, I was doing great in all of the other aspects of my teacher training. Now, here's what it was. One of our major assignments was a research project based on a more pastoral rather than subject-specific or curriculum-based issue. Now, once again, I can't remember the exact title. I think I have slightly deleted this from my memory. But I know my topic was something to do with the extracurricular opportunities at a school and dual-use facilities at schools. Now, this is something that happens a lot in the UK. So if, let's say, a school has a sports hall, they will sometimes hire that out to community groups, let's say in the evenings or at weekends. Now, I got to pick the topic from a list, and knowing what I know now, no way would I pick that topic again. It was much more about the extracurricular elements of students rather than about this whole dual use thing. So for a start, that wasn't a great route to go down. It wasn't really related very precisely or specifically to the actual topic I was supposed to be doing. But it was because the school that I was doing my teaching practice placement at the time had a lot of dual use facilities. And so I kind of just thought it would be a good primary source of information and show that I had, excellent knowledge of my placement school or something like that. Now, those aren't the worst reasons to pick a topic, but in hindsight now, they were definitely not the best. And I went through and I wrote this project, and at first hand in, I got a D grade. Now, I was, even in my 20s, of course, upset, disappointed, and yes, a little bit confused because I was historically always had been like a classic B+ grade student. So I did get to redo it. I got to tweak it. I got to edit it and rewrite parts of it and resubmit. And so, of course, I had to figure out, okay, well, where did this go wrong? What did I do? What did I not do? And of course, the feedback was, can you guess? You haven't answered the question. I'd just kind of ended up describing and giving examples of the extracurricular enrichment opportunities and the dual-use community activities within the school. And I'd done the exact same thing that I warned so many students about doing today. Even as a trainee teacher, I fell into the trap. Now, like I said, I can't remember the exact question, but I do know it would have for sure been at an analysis or evaluation level because it was a big extended response. It was a research assignment. It definitely wouldn't have just been asking me to describe and give examples of the topic that I was writing about. And I share this just to show that this can happen to anyone, even someone who should have known better. Now, of course, I do like to think that I wouldn't fall into this trap now, but that is only because I have had this imprinted onto my brain about 1,000 times in all different ways as an examiner, working with exam boards, moderating coursework, working with hundreds and thousands of students over the years. And it's, of course, exactly what I work on with students today to help them avoid. So I'm hyper-focused and alert to it. So here's what I see as the most likely reason that your teen might experience inconsistent results, no matter how consistent their effort and their knowledge is. It's most likely because they are giving information, but they aren't using that information or applying that information to actually answer the question. Or they're not responding to the question at the level that it requires. Now, this is what I call a topic trap. It's the exact trap I fell into, and it's the trap that I see so many students falling into. We get consumed by the topic, just like that humanities student did in her research inquiry, and just like I did in my inquiry investigation. And that means that they end up with an extremely comprehensive project. I don't know that mine was actually extremely comprehensive, to be perfectly honest, but very often I see students with extremely comprehensive projects. The student doing her humanities task certainly did, but it is lacking a focus or a particular level of response or a direction. So they've got lots of information, but they're not doing the right thing with the information, and they are likely stuck, like I was, at the describe and explain levels of response. And therefore, their work is lacking that application or analysis or other higher level commands, and isn't, therefore, here's the important part, accessing any of the higher level criteria. Not only are they not achieving it, they're not even accessing the higher level criteria. Now, another reason might be that there are actually inconsistencies within their assignment or response. Now, I will say that this is a less likely reason, but I do sometimes see it happening. So an example might be an essay that is, let's say, supposed to be discussing how a particular character in a novel is portrayed as a villain. But your teen, as they're talking about and getting drawn into that topic of the character, starts to tangent off and ends up discussing how the character also maybe has a generous or a kind or a positive side to them. Now, that would be okay if it was an evaluation level task, but not if it's simply analysis. Because what this would do is potentially count against them because it shows an inconsistent response or that they are using inappropriate evidence or examples. Now, I also sometimes see it where a student creates a thesis or a hypothesis, let's say it's in science or in history, and along the way in their discussion, they end up arguing the case against the thesis that they have stated. Now, again, it's okay to acknowledge this sort of thing in their errors or in their evaluation, but it would make the discussion confused or inconsistent if it was happening in the main part of their report. So the best way to avoid these things happening is to have your teen follow a detailed and proven planning process. So any student who's gone through my 10-week Great Transformation program or coaches with me will tell you that I am always banging on about spending more time and effort on dissecting the question and then planning in detail an essay or a large task, an extended response, whether it's for an assignment that they have flexible time on, or if they are actually in an exam. And this is why I've developed and I teach and train students in very specific and strategic planning steps and dissection steps, like the topic and focus system, so that students simply cannot fall into a topic trap. They see the trap and then they actively avoid it and stay on track to the focus, or the 3 steps of analysis so they don't end up with a waffling or unclear discussion. So if your teen's idea of planning is simply, okay, I have my thesis and I'm going to write about these 3 topics in my 3 body paragraphs, or potentially even less, they don't have a plan. Or if they just aren't clear on exactly what the question or assignment task is asking. And a great way to test this is, can they reword it so that an 8-year-old could understand it? That's a great way to check. Do they really understand what the question or assignment task is asking? Then these are likely reasons that they're getting inconsistent results, and these are the solutions. Because sometimes they'll end up by chance just hitting it on the head, and other times they won't. And of course, this goes for individual questions if it's in an exam as well. They might get 4 marks for one question on the paper and then bomb the next. And this is why, important side note here, this is why doing more research or spending more hours just studying the content is almost never the answer to this. It's never the solution if your teen is already studying hard. If they are feeling confident, and let's just say that's at a level 7 out of 10 or higher, confidence on their subject content. Very rarely, if ever, will doing more research or finding more information get your teen clearer on what they actually need to do and how they need to respond to a question or a task. Instead, the solution is more often that they actually need a system to dissect the question, get clear on exactly what it is asking, what that marking guide will require, and then use a plan that has them put that across and do it very strategically and effectively and efficiently. So I hope this sheds some light on what might have previously been perhaps a confusing or just simply depressing situation for your teen. Now, if you'd like a couple of practical steps and systems for doing this in exams and with exam questions, then definitely register for the Exam Success Secrets webinar, What Exams Demand of Your Teen But Schools Don't Teach. It's live at 7:30 p.m. AEST on the 11th of June 2024, or you can get the recording until the 17th of June. www.greattransformation.com/exams. I really hope that I will see you there. And if you're interested in getting this training for your teen, I will be sharing more at the end of the webinar about my 10-week grade transformation program and how your teen can be trained by me in all of this and much more to make them confident, efficient, and successful in their study. And I should say, the program is available all of the time, so go check that out no matter when you are listening to this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you back here next week. Take care. Bye. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week grade transformation program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.